Hello and welcome to our webinar today on boosting CRM user adoption in charities. So my name is Lauren and I'm from 9 Feet Tall. And 9 Feet Tall have worked with organisations across different sectors to select, set up and deliver the implementation of CRM systems. We've also been brought in to address issues of digital adoption and have helped other organisations get ROI and the desired benefits from a CRM. Once successfully implemented, your CRM system should become a single source of truth for customer data. And a CRM should be used as business as usual among your team. And hopefully you continue to evolve it, optimize and develop it. Sometimes teams use the system in different ways, or worse still, don't use it at all. If you know there are separate spreadsheets of data kicking around, which should be housed in your CRM, then there's usually some sort of issue with user adoption. So in today's discussion, we'll be exploring the benefits that can be unlocked when your CRM is fully adopted, how to measure the value, the challenges to avoid, and how to address the issues of culture. So first of all, I'd like to welcome our panelists. If you can each introduce yourselves and give us a little information about your background and your experience of digital adoption, that'd be brilliant. Katie, can we start with you?
Sure. Hello, I'm Katie. I'm the head of sales and marketing for Noisy Little Monkey. We're a HubSpot agency, so we deal with a lot of digital adoption and onboarding people with CRMs, specifically HubSpot. My background is actually in sales. I used to work in recruitment, and I've been working with HubSpot for the past 4 years, onboarding clients with it and making sure that our clients have the right onboarding plan so that it all goes smoothly. That's me.
Well, that's the plan. And Matt, what about yourself?
Hi, yeah, so I'm Matt Argyle. I'm head of IT at Children's Hospice Southwest. I've been there for about 9 years. And I guess when we started, we were very, very much behind on our digital journey, and it's just snowballed massively. And I think about 2 or 3 years in to my time, we worked with 9 Feet Tall to implement Salesforce as our CRM.
Fantastic. And Tiggy.
Hi, I'm Tiggy Atkinson. I'm very jealous of Katie's microphone. So you can hear me okay. So I'm a partner at 9 Feet Tall. And as Lauren says, we're a consultancy based in the Southwest, but operating nationally. So we work with all kinds of different organisations across a range of different sectors to help them implement technology platforms and to do business change. So we get involved in a lot of CRM programs because CRM is a tricky little solution to deploy correctly, actually, and to get good value out of. So I've been doing that for about 12 years. And then on the side, I'm also chair of a charity, so Jessie May. So that's Children's Hospice provision in the home. So I sit on the board there. So also we use the CRM solution and you know, grapple with trying to get really good value out of it and making sure that really it's embedded in everything that we do. So yeah, so I've got 2 hats on today.
Thank you. And to those that are watching live, if you do have any questions, please do pop them in the chat, and hopefully we'll have time to answer those as we go through the session. But first, you just mentioned it there, Tiggy, but I think it'd be really great if we could talk about, you know, the benefits and the value of a CRM. So can you give us an idea of where you've seen some real benefits that a CRM can provide to an organisation?
Yeah, I mean, so ideally, it just gives you one source of the truth. So have it rather than multiple spreadsheets, as you said, kicking about the place. So one source of data which all teams can access, which enables you to understand who your customers, your clients, your donors are, and how you're interacting with them, and also to personalize that journey a lot more than you can if you don't have a sophisticated tool, to be able to communicate with them effectively and target the communications that you have with them, and also to get insights and data that help you to make good decisions and ultimately, hopefully, increase your revenue by just working a lot smarter and actually being able to understand where you are being successful and where you're not. So to be able to make decisions if you've got particular campaigns that are working, do more of that. If you've got ones that aren't, to cull them quickly so that you move on to something that actually is going to deliver benefit and value for you as an organisation, and to your customers, your clients, your supporters.
And Matt, that sounds brilliant in theory, but can you talk a little bit more about potentially why some of these benefits aren't always unlocked?
Yeah, I think it goes back to the beginning, and I'm sure if you're in a situation where there are benefits that haven't been unlocked, like you suddenly find that you haven't got a single source of the truth, and some department is still maintaining a creaky old spreadsheet while everyone else is using a whizzy CRM. For me, it goes right back to the beginning of planning the project, and even more important, of bringing on board identifying all those departments who use customer information or any kind of information that CRM is going to interact with, and bringing them on board. And then we found that it's a full-time job, having somebody manage that. What you can't do is say to somebody in a department, right, you crack on with your day-to-day job. Now we also want you to implement parts of a CRM, because it's not going to work. They have to have the time to be able to deliver. And I think we found we put a lot of time into the prep and into the planning, and actually the delivery was pretty smooth. But I think Gartner identified that CRM is the one sort of digital project that's most likely to fail to meet its objectives out of everything you could implement. So 9 Feet Tall, I'm not here just to promote 9 Feet Tall, as it were, but they were brilliant at making us realise how much time we were going to need to dedicate to this initially, and the sort of support that they provided with that as well was what really helped us to deliver. So.
And Katie, you were nodding away there. What are some of the challenges that organisations face, kind of if you aren't properly adopting a CRM?
Oh gosh, there are so many. We work with a lot of clients who have had maybe slightly poor onboarding, or it hasn't been tailored to their company or their needs, or the right people haven't been involved in the process of choosing the CRM and then onboarding the CRM. So, I mean, to put it really simply, the biggest challenges is you're wasting your time and you're wasting your money. If people are having to do things manually, or, not efficiently, because the CRM hasn't been set up for your company, or people are resistant to change for whatever reason that it hasn't been adopted, it just leads to reduced productivity, and you're wasting your money on a system that isn't really working for your organization. And I mean, more granularly, I guess, you also have to worry about things like having inaccurate data. If you haven't adopted the new CRM, then you might still be using a legacy system for this. And so, as Tiggy said earlier, you don't have that single source of truth, and you have to use different platforms to find different things. And this could also impact your customers as well. If they don't have a smooth experience with you because you don't have easy access to all of your data, then you're probably not providing a great level of customer service either. God, I could talk for ages about this. There are lots of challenges about poor adoption, but I won't take up everyone's time.
And I guess alongside those multiple challenges with poor adoption, there's also a really big pool of CRMs to choose from. So, Tiggy, I guess if we take it back to the beginning, how do you even know if you're choosing the right CRM for your organisation when there is so much choice?
Well, I have to say, in my experience, a lot of organisations don't know that they're choosing the right one. They have a pet one, or somebody joins an organisation and says, I've used this in my past place, why don't we do that? So I think the vendor selection bit is really important, to do it objectively and to make sure that you understand. So first of all, to understand how it links to your strategy as an organisation. So what you're trying to achieve, is it revenue growth? Is it a better digital experience? What are the things that are really driving the organisation? And then think about what are the particular areas of functionality or specialism in your organisation which you must have as part of your CRM functionality set. And to be really clear and objective about that. So that sometimes, I would say this, but sometimes why having someone independent who's vendor agnostic helps. Doesn't need to be consultancy, but that can just help with removing some of the bias from the decision-making process. But also understand understanding what you really value in a partnership. So for some organizations, what they really want from a partner is somebody who's very solid and a big organization, so there's no risk that they won't be around in a couple of years' time. So you might want to opt for a very well-known provider, and I'm sure we can all name some. For other organizations, if they go down that route, they're going to be a very, very tiny fish in a very, very big pond. And actually what they want is an organization where they can be at the forefront of innovating and customizing a solution. So really, you've got to think about what you want, and how you want that partnership to work, and how personal you want that relationship to be. And also make sure that you meet not just the sales team, that you meet the implementation team, because sales teams are great at selling the dream, but actually you want to know what it's going to feel like to go through the implementation. And also another thing that I find is lacking a lot of time is the referencing. So making sure that actually you have spoken to customers who are other organizations who've been on the journey and they know what it feels like, and ask them about their experience. And I think also to understand if some organizations been through this, they've got the scars because it hasn't gone well, to learn from that. So Matt's point about planning and understanding what it takes to get these tools in and used properly, not to underestimate that, because often people grumble about, providers or vendors, but actually the organization themselves has to put in the effort and understand what they need to provide in order for an implementation to go well.
And it's interesting you talk about what can not go well. I guess, Matt, from your experience and implementing the CRM and going on that journey, what do you think is the most common pitfall, or what have you heard from colleagues in the sector, friends, previous experience? What are those things that can lead to poor adoption?
I think it once again, it goes back to the planning process. So that there can be a lack of employee engagement because they might have heard we were getting a new CRM, didn't really know what it meant, and all of a sudden they're having to go on a training course and they don't understand, and they've been working there 5 years, and why my spreadsheet was brilliant, why am I doing this? And you kind of get that level of resistance. You can get sort of lack of IT skills, which is something that we get, and we've shown people whizzy finance systems to do their expenses, and then realize that they struggle to work Facebook. So you have to kind of take them on that journey. I would say if you've got a good route into your senior management team or to your HR department, don't be afraid to put training into performance reviews as a target. Because it's really hard. They've got this general rule that there's going to be 10% of your staff who are so keen and so techie, they will just pick up and run with anything. And 10% will be massively resistant. And you've got 80% in the middle who are kind of like, yeah, if you as long as you point me in the right direction, I'll be all right. And we found the best way was actually give them some meaningful targets. And it works for them being upskilled, because it keeps them current and it makes them more effective employees, and it gives them a sense of achievement. So
yeah, and I think that change management and that curve that everyone's going to go on, both as an organization, those in the project team as well working on it can be a bit of a bumpy ride. Tiggy, I guess that's where we can use change management principles and practices to kind of both upskill the organization but kind of take people on that journey. Would you say that that's going to help? I assume that will help with our digital adoption.
Yeah, I think so. What we tend to see quite a lot of is a real focus on getting the technical solution in, because obviously that's the bit that people are worried about. You go live and press button 1 and everything falls over. So there's normally quite a lot of focus on getting the technical solution right, which makes sense, but it's no good if then nobody knows how to use it or wants to use it. So you only get the value and the return on investment when people use the system. So I would say in your planning, and to Matt's point about planning, not underestimating the change management piece is like but number one, whatever you put in your budget and you estimate, probably double it, and that'll be more like what you'll need. And so in change, I mean, I think about it quite simply. So there's the communication and engagement. So getting everybody on board and explaining why you're doing it and what the change is going to be like for them and what support they've got to be able to work in new ways is really important. Then there's a bit that gets missed a lot, which is the business readiness. So getting teams ready. This is how you used to work, and this is how you're going to need to work in the future. And that's button pressing, but it's also making sure you've got, like this kind of rituals, and that every day when you start your laptop, what system are you in? What system are you using? And how do you bake that in? What are the meetings you have that are focused around things that come out of the CRM, and just making it part of your everyday, if that's the tool you go to do your work, to send out your communications, it's the one you go to see where your to-do list is, you're going to use it a lot more than if it's just something that you don't think about really, because it's not being baked into your everyday stuff. So business readiness is about understanding where you need to bake the tools and those things that make stuff habit, because it takes like a month to form new habits. So you've got to be using something all the time. So understanding what the changes are required to get the system in use, and also understanding what different users' journeys are going to look like. So, for somebody who's looking at finance and income, they may need to look at the CRM data, I don't know, once every 2 weeks, whereas somebody in a fundraising team, that's their system they use every single day. So understanding what those different journeys look like is really important. And then making sure that the training isn't just the button pushing training, that it's actually, how's this going to affect your job? What you're going to do differently. So I think those things, if you think about them in advance, your likelihood of success and getting good return just goes up exponentially, because you've done the thinking up front and you've planned, your program has those elements within it. Really, really important.
And I guess following on from what you're saying there, if habits do take a month to form, then go live isn't necessarily the point in which all the magic happens. Actually, if we need another month afterwards for those habits to form and then for people to feed back, it's not that go live is the finish line.
It's a start, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, go live is technically it's in. That's what go live is. It's in, and does it work? Does anyone use it? How are you going to know? You're not going to know. You might know on day one, and it might be that loads of people log in on day one. On day two, nobody may. So yeah, completely agree. Go live is one milestone in what is going to be a long endeavor, and something that once you start, you can't stop. You have to keep investing in it for it to deliver return.
Yeah. Katie, I wonder if you've got any success stories where that there was a really good implementation plan, it was thought through, and actually that has led to some really good levels of adoption and usage and getting that ROI.
Yeah, and Tiggy, you made some really interesting points there. I feel like it reminded me of when you pass your driving test and then people say that you don't actually know how to drive until you drive on your own. CRMs are a little bit like that. So we essentially, with all of our clients, set people up so that they can drive on their own eventually, which sounds like a bit of a lame metaphor, but that's just what you reminded me of, Tiggy. We've got loads of enterprise clients who have sort of 5 or 6 different sales teams in different parts of the world. So having that implementation plan is so key to making sure that the onboarding is smooth and that they're all happy with it. So we essentially will get myself and HubSpot consultants in during the sales process. And Tiggy, you touched on that earlier as well, making sure that, yes, I'm in sales, but also the people who will be working with the teams work on the onboarding plan as well, so that they know the client before we even start working with them. We've had clients as well where we kind of make sure that it looks like the CRM was built for them. And I think customization is really key as well. We kind of wrap the CRM around their processes and also add some efficiency to that. So I think our main success stories is getting as many people from the organization who are going to be impacted by this new CRM involved in the sales process so that they can tell me about everything that they're worried about. I mean, naturally, human beings are so resistant of change. They're scared of it because we don't know. We don't like not knowing things. So I want to know everything that people are worried about when they're implementing a new CRM, and then creating a plan that will take away those fears or at least comfort them in some way. And then we know what they need the CRM to do, and every different aspect of the business needs it to do, so that we can make it work for them. So essentially investing time up front so that it will work and get ROI. And people see ROI within HubSpot after 3 months, sometimes if it's set up. So it's a really good bit of kit. So yeah, all of our success stories just come from planning, as you've all said.
I think that the 2 points that you said there that I thought were really interesting. One's about customization. So I've kind of got mixed views on customization because I've spoken to a lot of organizations who said, we're just going to take it out of the box. They take the solution out of the box, need a quick implementation. And so processes are going to have to change in order for us to be able to do that. And then when it's come to it, it's been like, oh no, well, we can't have that, and we can't have this, and we can't have the other. And so customization's crept in, and therefore there's been delays. And so I think customization is a really important thing to consider. One, for how quickly you want to get something in. Two, for whether you know, sometimes people try and design their CRM around their own processes, which probably evolved over time, and they're probably bad and not best practice anyway. So I do think there's something about being prepared and understanding that you probably will need to change your processes if you want to get the best out of a CRM, because they've been designed around best practice. So, you know, best practice ways of working. So I think customization is good if it's stuff which is to make it, you know, like naming things so that it feels familiar. If it's like actually trying to make some fundamental changes, I just really caution about whether that is something that must be done. I think that the bit on just ROI and getting that working well is just about the targets as well, like setting targets for adoption and setting targets for how you expect people to be working and checking that they are doing that, rather than just leaving it to chance. Because I think that's I used to work in with a law firm who shall not be named, who I love, great client, and they were talking to me through their old process of, you know, the old change management process from years ago, which used to be email out to everyone saying, this is happening on Monday, do it. And they've moved on miles and miles from that. But there is still a little bit that some organizations think that it will be enough to send a bit of online training content one day, and then the following week it's ready to go. And I just think that isn't the way. So people are change resistant, but a lot of people are change resistant if they feel like they don't know what they're being asked to do and they're not well set up. Most people, if you give them the right information, the right tools and support, will be able to adopt what you want them to do. It's just whether you're communicating well and whether you're supporting them to do it properly.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think communication is the most important thing, and with the right people as well. So not just the person who owns the project, but with everyone else who's going to be impacted by it. And I think I call it an upfront contract. So before each meeting, I let people know kind of what we're going to cover in that meeting so that they feel empowered to know what we're going to cover in that meeting. And there's no surprises, but yeah, couldn't agree more, Tiggy.
And Matt, kind of how did you face or how did you tackle these challenges? So in terms of setting targets for adoption and usage, as well as kind of, you know, bringing people along the journey with you. How did you guys tackle that?
Well, just reflecting what Tiggy and Katie said, really. I think the charity sector, in my experience on the whole, is not as great at setting targets and holding people accountable in the same way. So I used to work in fintech, and you know, a bit like you, Tiggy, and the law. You know, they're much sharper on holding people to account. So I mean, the way we went about it was we agreed what success looked like. That's how we started. So is that user adoption? Is that increase in revenue from donors? Is that stuff that we weren't able to do before, like when we have people perhaps signing up for an event, a nice thank you afterwards, and then we discover, oh, actually that we get more donations when we do that, because people actually appreciate the thanks and think of us, and there's that, and that's what you can track in a CRM, because you've got those interactions there with that donor and with that customer kind of and recorded, and we have a fairly, I'd say, well, probably normal, but a fair turnover in our fundraising team. But it does mean someone new can come along, pick it up, and see what the interactions were, and then run with it. And that goes back to them being able to give some targets that you then, the head of that department, can present to SMT or wherever it needs to go, or to their director or what have you. We report back to the board as well. Obviously, everyone does. We report back to our trustees about what we do. So, but it's making sure that what we're reporting back is actually, we've said we're going to do this target. Here's how all the teams are doing, and then that director can then break that down into something that's presentable to the trustees. And certainly at Children's Hospice, we do get held to account, which is actually sounds very scary, but actually it's great. It's great at getting things done.
Yeah. And I think what's interesting in CRMs, especially in the charity sector, is it's that switch, isn't it, from a supporter being perhaps an events or a community supporter or an individual donor, to then being seen as a supporter of the charity as a whole. And that's more easily identifiable and represented when they've got one record that shows all of their contribution for their lifetime in that one place. And every person who speaks to them can then reference their great work. How did the marathon go? Thanks so much for you recently increased your individual gift. And you can really see them as a true person and supporter of the whole organization, can't you?
Yeah, definitely. Something that's really powerful that we did is we had stats for the last year of our old CRM. And then a year into Salesforce, we were you kind of get lost in the noise a little bit when you're putting something new in. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of expectation, a lot of work. But it's really nice to go, well, here's where we were and here's where we are now. And hopefully that tells a really good story.
I guess, Katie, it'd be really interesting for us to touch upon how we know that we might be having an issue with digital adoption, in terms of we've got a system, we've got a team, we're feeling good because we've kind of told people that it's coming. How do we know if we're doing a good job before it's left too late?
Yeah, I think there are a few tells. The most common one being people just aren't using the system, if we're talking specifically about having a new platform. And it's either that they don't want to because they're set in their ways and the value of it hasn't been communicated properly to them, or they don't know how to because they haven't had sufficient training. Typically, some people, I'm talking about myself, are quite set in their ways as well. So salespeople sometimes can think that they've got really good relationships with clients. They don't need to use another system to manage those relationships. They've got their own way of doing it, even if they can save time by using the system. Another thing to tell is, and this comes a bit more from the beginning of the process rather than the ongoing, but if, as Tiggy said earlier, some people just don't have good processes to begin with, so they need to update those before they take on a CRM. So some reasons for people not adopting to a new platform is that they don't have a process for best practice data entry. So the data could be useless and the reporting is inaccurate. So then people aren't seeing the value of it because it's not being used properly. I think more generally, if you don't have a new platform and you're kind of working out whether you need to be a bit more, modern, I guess, or digital, it could be if you're still using legacy systems and you haven't thought about what systems are out there, if you don't know that things could be more efficient, or you're doing a lot of things manually, or things that you do a lot haven't been templatized. So there's a lot of tells. Those are the most common ones I come across. I don't know about anyone else.
Spreadsheets. Spreadsheets. Just everywhere you look. Oh, another spread. Oh, no, I didn't get that from the CRM. I got that from my spreadsheet that I use. Just yes. That. I mean, if you just, I think a really telling thing that we often do is when you get to map out what the as is process is, and you ask 4 different people and everybody tells you something different, and they've all got spreadsheets that they use from, I mean, GDPR nightmare from like 1972, and you just think, oh, why are you still holding that stuff for events? I mean, events is a classic one. You send a spreadsheet, sits in your email for ages, and it shouldn't be there. So I think there are definitely lots of tell signs. And the other thing that I think is really important, I don't know if anyone else has this issue, is who is using it. So do you have, like, your exec team, do they ever go in? Do they ever look at the CRM? Do they know even how to, like, log on? Because I think there's a lot about leadership. So if you want a system to be in use, everybody needs to start to use it and tell people that they're using it and role model it and showcase that they're using it. And so the leadership thing for me, which I'm sure we'll talk about that in change management, but that is really key, because if you're telling everyone else to use it and you don't, people just get cheesed off with that.
Yeah, and if the information that you're after is readily available in the CRM, but you don't know it, then you know there's a problem there, because it should make communication much clearer, but actually people aren't all looking at it or looking in the same place, and that's a big problem for some of our prospects anyway.
And there is that old adage, isn't there? It's like poor data in, poor data out. Sorry, Matt.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think one of the big things we've come to realise in the last couple of years is we're sitting on a treasure trove of information that will now enable us to make really smart decisions. In the case of Children's Hospice Southwest, we're all the way from Penzance, Isles of Scilly, all the way up to South Gloucestershire. So, and it's amazing the kind of regional information we've managed to pull out. And I think we all sort of said when we put it in, we want some reporting, but actually now we're going, hold on, this is really, really good stuff that can enable us to make really informed business decisions. Whereas I think, before crunching out a spreadsheet and saying, didn't this area do well, didn't really give us the depth of knowledge that we've now got. So
I think it's that difference, isn't it, between you had data before, but now you're starting to build insights, and that kind of shift, which is a cultural shift as well, I guess, from reporting to kind of asking why and kind of poking that information a bit more.
Definitely.
Tiggy, you were going to jump in there.
I think that bit about reporting, Matt, and the power of that, being able to bring all those different sources of data together because you've got them in a single database, and showing the power of that to your decision makers and getting them excited about that and interested and saying, oh, can we get this data and can I see that? That's, because then actually it really matters that the data is accurate, because people are using it to make decisions, and that will drive people to say, I want to make sure all of this stuff is filled in because I want to be able to see, the latest information. So I think getting the insights out drives people to push for better accuracy.
Mm-hmm. And Tiggy, we've talked here about kind of digital adoption. I was hoping you could talk to us a bit about digital adoption maturity and what we mean by that, and kind of how we can address it to even know where we are in the point, in the maturity scale.
Yeah, so I think digital adoption maturity is about how mature you are as an organisation in being able to not just implement digital solutions, but actually drive the take up and the usage of that, so it delivers value to you as an organisation. So we have a model that we use that focuses on a number of elements. So it starts off looking at the alignment to your strategy, basically, and then considers things like, what's your change leadership? Have you got people who actually care about this stuff and are going to champion it for you, and what's your change network look like? So do you have people in the organisation who are up for, as Matt said, who will grab hold of it, the 10%, really keen super users want to get involved in technology, and how do you use those people? Also, if you've got a product roadmap and a product owner, because actually once these things are in life, you can't just stop doing stuff. You have to keep moving things forward. So, you know, what enhancements are you going to make? What training have you got? How is it baked into business as usual when people get onboarded? So having someone who's responsible for that is really, really important. And also process ownership within the organisation. Do you know who's responsible for a process? So it might be, I don't know, it could be referrals, it could be legacy, it could be anything. But do you know who's responsible for that? And therefore, do they have a forum or a point where they can engage to say, do you know what, the CRM's not doing what I want in this area. I would like some improvements, some enhancements. Because then you get demand and actually people are using it and working out what they want. Because when you first put in a CRM, you often don't know what you're going to use it for, really. And so it's over time that you get that understanding. And then also thinking about training, communication, engagement, and knowledge sharing. So what are your processes for that? Is it just technical button pressing training that happens once at go live and then that's it? Or have you really got a mature, well thought through program of training and knowledge sharing, which is alive and it evolves, and it's also accessible depending on what you need, you know, when you need it. So it's not just a one-stop, you know, one-time hit. And then what tools and measures are you using? So how do you know whether you've actually got good adoption? How, you know, what data are you using to back that up? And how often are you doing reviews to check what the adoption is like compared to the targets that you set? So those are the areas we look at. And what we tend to do is often we get asked to look at digital adoption maturity before someone approaches a big program. So what we'll do is we'll look at what the adoption is like with the legacy system and what lessons we can learn from that. Then we'll set measures for the future digital adoption, and then we'll track how we're performing against that. And we'll identify the things that didn't work very well last time that we really need to focus on for the future implementation. So it's a really helpful benchmark as well to say, you know, we're currently kind of a bit ad hoc, and actually what we'd like to move towards is something which is fully developed and we know how we do this stuff and we can do it repeatedly, depending on whether it's a CRM or a finance implementation or a new HR platform. We have a way of making sure we get good adoption of digital tools.
It's interesting because a lot of the things that we've touched upon today already revolve around changes to the culture or the ways of working or the way in which the business operates. Matt, did you find that at Children's Hospice South West that the culture of the business had to shift or adjust slightly too?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, back to what Tiggy was saying earlier about you know, the danger we were all made aware of is that you know, the staff would just design your old system on the new system. And that's quite, and we were like, yeah, we totally get that. We're not going to do that. But it's actually something that's quite hard to achieve when you've got people, including the guys that are managing the department, who've probably been there longer than anyone else and are more invested in this particular way of doing something. You know, when you sort of float in there as an IT bod and go, right, you're going to have to completely change the way you work. Good, you know, good luck. It's quite a hard sell. So yeah, there's definitely. I mean, they get it, they got it for sure. And when you sort of spend the time to sit there and explain why we're doing it and show them the kind of efficiencies, they're not just one of those, you know, sales pitch efficiencies that you never actually realize, they're real sort of efficiencies, then that definitely, you know, makes a huge difference. But I mean, I think, yeah, there's definitely a cultural change. I think, you know, bizarre, and this is a weird thing for me to say, but COVID massively helped us in that respect. And I'm sure we're not unique in that. And all of a sudden, everybody was at home and they couldn't do stuff. You know, they couldn't just go and pull open that filing cabinet and find that thing. It all had to be electronic and digital. So yeah, we kind of, you know, our digital adoption journey was suddenly on absolute overdrive for about 2 months. but yeah, and we're, you know, you know, in terms of digital transformation, we're in a much better place, and culturally the organization is completely different to how it was pre-COVID. So yeah, I think definitely there's cultural change.
And Tiggy, what's your advice for an organization that would like to create a culture that embraces change as opposed to resists change?
Oh, that's a good question. What's my advice? I think recognizing the value of it. So knowing that change management is often underestimated. I think it's really important that your leadership get the fact that this is a bit of a journey. It's not a send an email out, everybody's going to get trained done. It's a continual, so people's learning and development and motivation to do well in their job is linked to the tools that they have and how well they feel trained. So I think it's just accepting that investment in ongoing training and development and support will help you realize your investment in tech. So that just shift away from we're going to do a 30-minute training session because people are busy, that being a false economy, and actually saying if we do good training, our return on investment is going to come quicker and it's going to be greater. So we're going to invest in it, and we're going to do training, we're going to do follow-up training, we're going to have user forums. That's how you get really good adoption, and you understand how best to use your CRM, and you learn. So it's got to, I think it's got to come from the top, and an investment in people and time to get them working really well with a new system.
Katie, what's your advice for when training should be considered in the implementation?
Yeah, I think it's kind of before, during, and after, to give a bit of a politician's answer, because I think it depends what you mean by training as well, because people's understandings will come at different points. And there's coaching and there's mentoring, but I think people need a foundational understanding before we implement any change of what the CRM is going to do. So how is it going to impact your job? How is it going to work for that? What are the features of the CRM? What can it do? What can't it do? Before you can kind of get it off the ground running. So I think having some sort of demo, whether you can call that training or not, and understanding people's requirements with it, and then letting them have a little play, if you will, and then coaching them through how that will affect their job, I think is really crucial before the implementation. Obviously, during, that's where possibly more like one-on-one training would be really important. So how to use it effectively and not just how to use it. I think in-person training, I know it's a post-COVID world and we don't necessarily need to do this, but it can be really beneficial for some people because everybody learns differently. I'm a kinesthetic learner, so I learn best by teaching other people to do something, even though that sounds weird. But I think in-person training can be really useful. Some people learn really well through video tutorials or, Zoom training. But I think during is where it's got to be the most hands-on, whatever that means to the individual users. And then I guess post-implementation, it would be more about checking in, making sure that people are adopting well to it, making sure that it's working for them. And obviously there will be system updates to the CRM. So making sure that the training is up to date with how the CRM is working. If there's a new feature, training people how to use that and get the most out of that. And then you'd also need a process in place for if somebody new joined the organization, they're going to be coming in at a stage where everybody else is using it now. So it's going to be different to if you got trained during the implementation. So essentially, constant training is
I think we've all seen what can happen if your training on a system is just from the person you sit next to as part of your induction, and you kind of learn their really bad habits and not how the system can get used. But actually, sometimes when time's tight, that does happen. So I guess to Tiggy's earlier point, making sure you've got that investment in the change and the training on an ongoing basis as well, not to underestimate it.
Can I add a couple of things? Sorry, I think so. Before I am a bit of a bore about this, but understanding different user journeys for different groups. So my bugbear about training is it's just a one size fits all, and it's not tailored to how you expect a particular group of people to use your tool. So the thing I think is investing in understanding who your groups are, different types of system users, and what you expect their typical usage of the system to look like, and training that so it's really bespoke to the role that people have in the organisation. And I think the other thing is, so training's great, but one of the things that I think is most important is prepping and giving team managers and team leaders the confidence to have a discussion with their team and say, right, we've got a new tool coming in, or we've had the new tool for a month or a week or whatever. How are we all using it? Do we need to put in place new processes? Do we need to have different meetings than we had before because we've learned some stuff? And to keep that conversation going, because I think training is only one bit of it. It's just then how do you make it part of your everyday is the bit where you've got to empower other people who are running those functions or those teams to really take hold of it and get the adoption and get the usage right. And if that means that your process that you designed in your project becomes redundant because actually now you know how you're using it, that's okay, because actually you've learned. So I think it's making sure that the conversation continues and there are forums to have those discussions and to keep learning and keep tweaking what you're doing so that you get best use out of it, but also that people feel like it's an ongoing conversation.
Matt, I wondered if before we look to kind of wrap up, if you had any tips from your experience that you would want to pass on to those on the call.
Sure, yeah. I guess the first one is address negative feedback really quickly, which we learned from experience where word gets around, and we had an occasion where it wasn't a CRM, but somebody was logging into a system, and coincidentally, when it happened, her phone went offline. And so, 6 months later, we walked into that apartment, and everyone's unplugging their phones before they log in. And, what are you doing? I go, oh yeah. When we log in, it knocks our phones offline. It doesn't, and so if we'd have been on it and go, no, that's not related. You're absolutely fine. You can, you don't need to unplug your phone to log in, but. It's anything where you get some negative feedback, like just get on it and address it, because it will pay dividends. And we do that through, we have I'm sure a lot of organizations do, we have digital champions. So we've taken that 10% who are chomping at the bit and we've trained them up. We've given them access to sort of, the super user training. Now that we're all kind of hybrid working, we've got a dedicated team for our champions. So, and they feed back to us, which is really effective. They'll feed back to us what they're finding out about what's going on with CRM or finance system or HR, and we'll be able to pass that on or deal with it. And we sort of give them the sort of roadmap of their system, and we feed back to them. And then within their little teams, within their team meetings, they'll have tips and techniques sessions for the CRM or whatever system it is. And we've come up with a way of producing training courses that are on menus. So that like a restaurant. So the big thing we had is, why aren't you going on a training course? I haven't got time. It's like, well, you're telling me you don't have 15 minutes. Like, we can do how to do X in 15 minutes. Look, here's our menu. You pick what you want to do. So it's just trying to find any hook you can get in there, really, just to help people along. And absolutely, Katie, what you were saying about face-to-face training. I'm lucky enough in my team. I've got a dedicated trainer who, we've done Teams training, we've done online resources, but for some people, you just can't beat that face-to-face, and we're very happy that we're back to delivering that. So yeah, that would be the ones that spring to mind.
No, I think that's really helpful. Katie, do you have any top tips for boosting user adoption?
Yeah, I would say similar to Matt. I mean, yeah, listen to people's negative feedback and take it on. But I think it starts from the very beginning and who you involve in the process and who you involve in the selection process even of the CRM. So getting the right people involved, obviously too many cooks spoil the broth or whatever the phrase is, but I think making sure that enough people are involved in that process so that people feel listened to and heard, and you can share feedback early on and people are prepared for change before it even happens, I think is a really good thing to do. We've talked about it loads, providing the right sort of training, the right kind of support, communicating, I feel like has been a really key topic of this, and doing that efficiently and effectively. Sharing the benefits is a really key part of that communication process, making sure that people understand why that change is happening. And it's not just some thing that the CEO has decided because they're bored, it's going to drive ROI and it's going to have a positive impact on what we do. Tiggy, I know we slightly disagreed on this earlier, but I do think personalization, or at least a user interface that is helpful, is really useful in CRM. So I use HubSpot, and I have a dashboard that shows me the reports I need for my job, but somebody who worked in customer service would have a different dashboard, and that's what I see when I log on in the morning. And I think having that, and Tiggy, you mentioned that earlier, having that thing that you do first thing in the morning, having that routine, that really sets me up for my day. Anything else? That's it.
I guess following on from that, one thing that's a tip from me, I'm going to ask myself, is to kind of celebrate the successes when you do achieve them. So for example, if you do have those 10% of early adopters, it sounds like, Matt, you are kind of rewarding them in making them the digital champions and kind of acknowledging the fact that they are the front runners when it comes to this. And actually then that means they're more engaged and more privy to additional information. I guess similarly, when you do see people changing habits, especially potentially people who you didn't think were going to, and whether that, like you say, Tiggy, is in a team meeting where you openly say, what are we struggling with this system, but also can I just say thanks to so and so because they've really given it a good go, and we just appreciate that. So I guess celebrating the good stuff as well as asking for the feedback and addressing the negatives. Before I come to you, Tiggy, I just want to remind those on the call that if you do have any questions, let me know, because we should be able to squeeze one in. But Tiggy, what are your top tips for boosting user adoption?
I've just been looking at the chat. Eddie's online just made some really good points about like automation and workflow, making things really as easy as they can be. And I think that point about Katie, you just said about you go in and your to-do list is there and that's how you start your day. So I think it's also about integrations with other tools. So, you know, with Outlook, potentially with, you know, where do people spend their time and how do you integrate your CRM so that actually it's easy for people to enter data and it's easy for them to update statuses, so that it's not just having to go out and then go in your CRM and then, you know, single sign on and all that sort of stuff, so that it's just, it makes you efficient. And actually when you work like that, you think that was easy and I want to do that again, rather than having multiple systems, which is really clunky and spreadsheets. So it's how do you design something that integrates with everybody's day-to-day life and job, so that you feel a benefit of using it. And I think that takes a little bit of time sometimes.
I guess anything else that the panel feel like they would want to give as advice, top tips, or words of warning?
If you're looking at integration with other systems, downloading and uploading a spreadsheet isn't integration. You know, a lot of them will say, a lot of systems will say they've got an API as well, but you need to do that. I've seen when I've been on tendering and sort of panels in the past that, you know, oh, it's got an API tick, but actually you need to dig under. This is something for your IT departments. You've got to dig under the bonnet of that about what that means. You know, something like Salesforce has a lot of built-in integrations. But it doesn't mean that you can just go click, right, that's done, we've built it in. There's a lot of work that goes on to make systems work with each other. So it's definitely worth doing, But, you know, just be aware that there's a volume of work to be done there. And also when somebody upgrades their finance system, you know, when you've got when they release the latest version, it can break those integrations. So it's just something, like a lot of things we said today, it's just something to stay on top of and review. But it's definitely worth doing, because that's when you get the efficiencies that the CRM will bring.
My final thing would be to respect internal deadlines. Sometimes it feels like you've got lots of work to do for clients if you work in the B2B space, but to implement change internally, you have to respect internal deadlines that you've made with your colleagues and respect their time. Also, I'm not just saying this because we're an agency, it's okay to get external help with change management. It's a really difficult thing to do sometimes. So it's okay to kind of seek external help. People like Tiggy can help, and she's great.
And I guess also it's that, if you don't have that internal capability or understanding, going out and trying to find people who can help and upskill your team in the process.
Yeah. And from being on the, being as a client of 9 Feet Tall, it's great to have that that voice that perhaps internal staff can't say certain things. It's great to have that.
Yeah.
And I also think, it's great to have external help, but not all organisations and charities can afford that. So I do think there's something about, if you're going to go down this journey and you haven't done it before, try and find some other charities or some other organisations who have been down the road and speak to them, because that won't cost you anything, or speak to us just to get, there's some massive pitfalls that so many organisations go down, which you can really avoid if you talk to people about what their experience of implementing CRMs are. So don't sit there and go down those pitfalls because you can't afford to get another party in to help you, because there's lots of free advice out there too. So just don't let that be prohibitive.
Yeah, and at 9 Feet Tall, we are actually offering everyone a 90-minute workshop for free to help you assess your digital adoption maturity and help you identify some areas that you could improve on, and that's for you and 5 of your colleagues. So keep an eye on your inbox, because you will get some information about that, and if you're watching it back, reach out to us. So thank you so much for attending and joining today, and thanks to our panelists Tiggy Atkinson, Matt Argyle and Katie Roberts. This is a recorded session, so if you want to watch it back or pass it on to colleagues, it will be on our website. But thank you all very much for joining today.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Bye.